you, the community, can call in. Today, we've got Berlin-based DJ and music producer AERA with us today. So if you have got questions for a professional touring recording artist, you should get them ready to put them in the chat so we can ask those to him as well. You guys can be part of the interview. I see some folks in the chat already. Joshua Pheasant, what's going on? Jay Scholes, Pascal. My mom and dad are in the chat. Fantastic. 343 Labs in the chat. What's going on? BJ Magar, Sky. Hope I don't miss anybody. Enigmatic Onion, hello, hello. Ray Calvin, Spiridula, what's up? Oh, and AERA himself is in the chat. Watch out. We are going to bring him on in just a moment, but I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by 343 Labs, which is an electronic music school with online classes with some of the best instructors around, like touring recording artists, beatport charting producers, people with like long storied careers in electronic music. Like if you want to learn from the masters, 343 Labs is definitely the place to be. In addition to our regular courses, we've got pro sessions, which are like these intense, like 2-day workshops on the weekends. And actually our guest today is going to be doing a pro session just like that, which we'll talk about later today. But I don't want to talk too much. I do want to, however, play you a clip of AERA's music before we jump into the interview. So let's check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, AERA. AERA, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
I'm so stoked that we can be across the world from each other and two musicians like having a conversation. You know, it's almost, this has become like normal. This is just like normal now.
Right? Isn't it amazing how normal it is? Like,
yeah.
Where are you located actually?
I'm in California, so I'm in Los Angeles.
All right.
And you're in Berlin, right?
In Berlin, yes.
Yes. Has that been a good spot to be quarantined?
Yeah, it's been okay, especially in the summer. It was quite nice here.
Sure.
Right now it's gray and dark and snowy, so it's good to be inside and not have to worry about going out, I guess.
Right, for sure. Well, before we get too deep into talking about all that fun stuff, I guess like I gave you a very basic intro at the start, like music producer, DJ. You have, of course, you're a very multi-talented, multifaceted artist yourself. How do you, when people ask you what you do, like family members or, you know, people that you meet, new people, how do you describe what you do to new people?
It's always, I'd say, DJ, producer, and label owner. That's like
sure.
the easy one. And I'd say I'm making music, generally speaking, in the genre of electronic dance music. I would say house, maybe deep house. It's always hard to really define the kind of genre that you're doing, especially since I'm very much interested in all different types of music. And also, I guess every person that you talk to has their own kind of definition of what house music is, exactly, or what techno music is. So
it's hard.
You could also say, you could also tell people like, yeah, just listen to my music or listen to a mix.
Sure.
But in the end, yeah, it's electronic dance music in the broadest sense.
For sure. I like hearing about how you have like this broad spectrum of influence. How does that play into like your music making? Do you ever feel locked down by wanting to fit in a specific genre or people's expectations of a genre? And like, what's that balance like between like wanting to meet people's expectations, but also to wanting to combine a bunch of different influences?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's always the kind of thing that I'm trying to balance. I guess having made music for quite a long time, there's just different tropes and different kind of um, techniques and maybe ideas that I always come back to,
Sure.
especially when it comes to sound design or melodies. There's just things that I gravitate to. So I guess whatever genre or whatever BPM I'm doing, there's always hopefully something that's recognizable and some kind of signature that I guess people might expect from what I'm doing.
Totally.
So
Can you
it's a good
describe
question, and also,
can you describe
yeah,
those any of those signatures? Because I think that that's really interesting too in electronic music specifically, because it's so easy to, you know, get caught up
yeah,
in tropes and caught up in stuff like that. But when you take the inspiration from all different places and you combine them into something new, it does become really distinct. Like your sound, for instance.
yeah. I'd say it's very playful. Um, it is very colorful also. Like
Yeah.
I see music very visually, especially when I make it myself. And for me, there's like, for example, if you have like the typical techno kind of sound, it's very gray and
Yeah.
dark, like Berlin right now. And I would say that my music is generally more colorful and has a lot of um, like brilliance in a way. That's
Sure.
what I'm trying to look at, or like some playfulness to it.
Where do you think that
That's
comes
that's that's
from?
what I'm looking.
Because you're right, a lot of Berlin artists and a lot of, you know, people in that scene, it comes from a very dark place. But it seems like you're kind of
Mm.
coming from you almost should be on the tropical scene or something like that. It seems like because of how happy like and
Yeah,
joyful
maybe.
you're going for.
Yeah, I guess that's just the person I am. I don't know.
Sure.
S-
That's
Also,
awesome.
the interesting thing is that like the music that I gravitate to when I listen to music at home or privately is much more subdued, much more introspective, maybe, and
Right.
calm. Um, so it's just what I do. It's just what makes me happy when I create it, I guess.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because I think I'm a similar way where the music that I listen to versus the music I make are often two completely different things. Are you that way? Like, do
Mm.
you have that distinction?
Yeah, I think for for when I like I would also make a distinction between the kind of music that I would play out, for example, as a
Sure.
DJ, and the things that I like to listen to or that I just enjoy listening to at home. So and also when I go out, the kind of things that
Yeah.
thrill me. So that's where I would draw this kind of distinction. So at home, it's a lot of very calm ambient music without a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Also, things that maybe not take too much attention
Sure.
in a way. And then when I really listen to music, it could be everything, but a lot of singer-songwriter music actually, stuff that's just pop music, anything really,
Yeah.
except for dance music, which I mainly hear when I'm out or when I used to go out.
Yeah, yeah.
Right now, that's not possible anymore. But that's yeah.
Do you have like a work sort of relationship with dance music? Is that kind of how it feels?
Um, that's a good question too. It doesn't really feel like work. No, it's not like I do this music because I feel like I have to, which for me is a definition of work. Like work is something that you're that you have to do.
Yeah.
For me, it's still play. It's still the kind of music that I just enjoy making the most. Probably also that I'm the best at and that I've been doing for the longest time.
Yeah.
But it's also just what I love and what I enjoy making.
Yeah, let's bring it back.
But
Like, how did you get started? Like, how did you discover that you were really good at making dance music and all that?
So I started actually really young. I would say mid 90s was when I had my first little workstation synthesizer. I have an older brother who's into DJing. He used to buy like old drum and bass records. He was into hip hop, soul, funk, all of that kind of stuff. And he was very influential for just showing me, like, going to record stores, and just teaching me about music, basically.
Yeah, that's great.
But then I really quickly kind of found my own way, or my own things that I gravitated to. So I still remember, like, one of the first records that I really loved was some acid house record.
Nice.
It had a big smiley on it.
Okay.
And I was just in love with that image of this vinyl record, which was like a full, how do you call it, like these full colored vinyls, you know, like where you have the vinyl picture vinyl disc.
Oh, the face was on the vinyl
smiley
itself.
Yeah. It was just a huge big smiley, like a picture disc, and I just loved that. And I brought it home with me and I put it on the record player, and suddenly I hear these sounds that I've never ever heard before, which of course was like acid. You have the 303, you have an 808, you have all of these like typical things. And I just wanted to know, like, what is going on? What is this? How can I make this? This actually happened pretty quickly when I first heard this kind of music, and that's how I started, together with my older brother, who had an Atari and an Akai sampler, like an old one.
Oh, okay.
The Atari with like the second version of Cubase.
Wow.
On it, and I got this workstation keyboard from a company called Quasimidi. It's called Raven. It was like a workstation where you could make like basically dance music. It was kind of sold as this machine where you can do everything with, and that's how it started.
That's awesome.
How it started.
And how does that evolve into like eventually playing live and stuff?
Actually, the funny thing about this workstation was, I'm still thinking about that from time to time, that I think you had like 8 tracks with like 8 sequencer tracks, and you could mute them and you could play them, basically. So you could create like a live arrangement, live session. And I've worked like that for a long time, and basically just recorded my jams on, back in the days it was tape, or DAT, like this digital audio tape, and then later like mini discs, and then after a while, of course, we got like a proper computer with like the first versions of Logic, where you could then record your things like more professionally. But I always kept this way of working where I didn't really arrange things on the screen, like, you know, copying and pasting and going from left to right, but basically just trying to have like a live jam, or like an improvisation character to the music, and just record these takes, like sometimes very long takes, and then edit them down to something that's more approachable, I guess.
So is there anything that you like now in the digital age, now that I'm sure things are so much easier and we have so many possibilities, but is there anything you miss about the old days? Like the old like recording to tape and the old workstations, like anything you miss? Or are you super glad that we're in this new digital age?
I love it.
Yeah.
I I I don't really feel like there's of course this idea that when you're kind of um that when you don't have a lot of possibilities, it forces your creativity to find like workarounds
Yeah.
and make do with what you have. That's like one thing that I often hear, but I can't really relate to that, to be honest. Like I'm just happy that I can do what I do with what I have without having like I just need a laptop and I can create um everything with it.
Yeah.
Even though I don't have to, but I could. I really love it. Like the more options, the better for me.
Yeah. Do you find yourself you're doing a lot with just the laptop, or are you using a lot of outboard gear? Like what's the current music making setup look like?
Recently, yes, since I have a studio like that I go to, but when the first lockdown happened, I just couldn't and
Right.
didn't want to go there. So actually, the last year I did a lot of music with only my laptop, and it also works. I like it more to have more haptic feedback, like to use controllers, to use like a
Yeah.
bigger keyboard, and also to use outboard gear. It just feels better
Yeah.
in a way, and it's oftentimes faster and feels more natural. But it's not necessary, I would say. No,
For
it's not
sure.
necessary.
What DAW are you working in these days?
Ableton,
Nice.
Ableton.
Yeah.
Just ever since, actually, for me, Ableton was the first DAW that I really finished music with, because
That's so
before that,
interesting.
as I said, since I was mainly just improvising and
Yeah.
like doing the live takes with Logic and with Cubase, that doesn't really work so well. Like it is possible, but once I opened Ableton for the first time and saw the session view and arrangement view and got my head around that, it
Yeah.
like just made so much sense. And that was like 10 years ago, and I think, or 11 years ago. And I was also like just shortly after when I released my first record, where was actually really happy with it, where I
That's
said like,
great.
okay, this is something that I want to put out. So yeah, I'm happy with Ableton. I love it.
Yeah, amazing. I know in your pro session, so if people don't know, Era is doing a pro session with 343 Labs. It's like this 2-day workshop. It's this weekend, right?
Yeah, this weekend.
Nice. And the link is in the description if you guys want to check that out. I think the early bird tickets are sold out, but regular tickets are not sold out, so you should check that out. But I think you're touching on like finishing a track, right? On one of the days. You're talking a
Yeah.
little bit about that. Not to give it all away, but for someone who works like you do, like working in like this kind of live session improvisation environment, like
Mm-hmm.
what does get you to actually finish a track? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in either the loop or the live and improvisation. Like
Mm-hmm.
what pushes you to make those decisions and say, okay, this is the track, or this is what I want to officially record and put on the record?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say things that happen quickly and easily and without too much thought are
Yeah.
usually the ones where I can say like, oh, this is it. Because for me, that's also the ones where when they happen fast, I can almost listen to them as if I were like somebody who listens to it for the first time. Like the quicker I am and the
Yeah.
less I'm thinking and the easier it is, um, the easier it gets to say like, okay, this is done, this is good, and also to be more objective.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what I would say is like the big issue when you're trying to finish something, is finding this balance between being really into the music, into the details, and hearing every small thing, but then also being able to kind of zoom back and have like a bigger picture and to look at it or like listen to it more from the outside. And if I'm fast, it's much more easier to get this like objective overview, I would say.
Yeah.
Which I guess is not something that you. I guess it takes time to get there.
Yeah,
like it's not the easiest solution, because you have to know your tools.
Exactly.
You have to know, like, if you have something in mind, how to get there. And this is, I guess, where experience comes in.
Right.
But there's also,
I was gonna say, a lot of it is based on like instinct, right? Like you're reacting to your instinct, and if what's first comes out is good, then go with that. But I'm wondering, like, a lot of DJs and producers don't take a more traditional like music theory route. So I'm wondering, like, what your background is in that, and understanding, like, you know, the fundamentals of music theory, getting your music to like actually sound good, harmonies, melodies, all that. Like how were you trained that way?
I had basic keyboard lessons actually as a bargain with my parents when I wanted this workstation thing. They basically said, yeah, you'll get it, but you have to take classes. So that was a good deal. That was
for
not
sure.
smart of them. And I took some of that with me, generally speaking, when it comes to like harmonies and how to build chords and how to write melodies, and also this kind of just feeling for the music. Like, if I have a certain melody in mind, I'm pretty quick of like playing it. Like, I don't have perfect pitch, but I could probably play a melody that I have in my head relatively quickly, or get it down. So it's, that's what I have. I would say, like, from a theory perspective, it's not like that deep, but I always try to know enough to be able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then whenever I hit a certain roadblock, I just try to find, that's always like a reason for me to learn. So
right.
Yeah,
I think like ear training, like your ears are probably very well trained. So like if you're hearing melodies in your head, you're able to translate them to the keyboard. I think people underestimate, like, learning basic keyboarding like goes such a long way. Did you were you ever like trying to recreate songs? Like, did you ever take a path where you like wanted to like recreate a song that you really liked or something, like when you first started, to kind of learn the techniques, or like?
I no, I did that once. I did, but that was when I was already making music for a long time. I know that's something that is often said to help, but when I started out, I was on my own, or like me and my brother, we were on our own. Like, there was not a lot of information out there, and it didn't even occur to me to even try that. Of course, you had your heroes, like producers that I was looking up to, that I kind of try to emulate or find out how they do certain things.
Right.
But just taking something and recreating it never really occurred to me when I started out.
Sounds like a lot of absorbing, like just absorbing the influences, you know?
Yeah. Listening to a lot of music and just basically trying to figure out what's going on. I remember when I first got my really, like, I still remember to this day, the first time I saw like notes lined up on a grid.
Yep.
And I tried to find out like how a certain beat looks on the grid.
Right.
And then look at the grid and try to imagine, okay, what does this beat now sound like?
Yeah.
That's a thing that I did for sure.
Well, that's like modern day music notation. Like, that's like,
right. That's I guess how you learn. And then when you think about, like, okay, straight quarter note bass drums, really easy.
Yeah.
But then, like, from there you can go and get more complicated rhythms and try to like look at the notation and try to find out what is actually playing. Like these kind of things I did, and I was also listening to tracks and maybe like try to find out how a certain sound is being made or like how a certain rhythm plays and recreate that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. We have a really good question from Jay Scholes in the chat. Says, AERA, have you noticed much difference in finalizing a track at your home studio versus a studio location, and how has your workflow and collaborations changed during COVID-19? Well, you're working on an album, right? Are you about to release one?
No. No, I'm not. That like the first. That's a good question, actually. Like really finalizing things, I find hard just on the laptop.
Sure.
Because I just like to listen on better speakers, and also it just feels better to finalize things. But that's really just like the last final touch of like polishing everything once it's done. And I also feel that I'm better at arranging when I'm in the studio, because I just feel more free, or like arranging as in pressing record and improvising, or like recording the track. I just need a certain level of freedom that I like a certain headspace that I can get into much easier when I'm in the studio.
For sure.
So like the first sketch doesn't really make a big difference, but then when it comes to arranging and also finalizing, it's more fun to do it in the studio for sure.
What is that? What makes that different?
It's just, I would say it's just the vibe of my studio space. I just like being there, and it just gets me into a mindset of, especially when it comes to just pressing record and jamming. It's just, I don't know, just feels better.
Yeah.
And the sound is better there. I've got my speakers, I've got my setup, and even though I must say I did this one remix actually 2 tracks that came out last year, I started and finished at home. There's this one track called Ode to an Empty Dance Floor, which I made actually, I think, on like the first days of lockdown.
Yep.
Just being at home, and that's also kind of the idea behind the track, was to like, you can do it, like you don't need anything like fancy to finish the track. And also this remix that I did for Aldebaran, that came out on my own label, on the Polite Magic. I did that one completely on my laptop at home.
Yeah. And, that ties into a question that Reese Audrey has, and she's asking about advice for writing and recording, producing music on your own. Like, what is it like? Like, has music always been kind of a very like well, you talked about working with your brother, but otherwise beyond that, have you been like very independent, very solo? Like, is it very insular?
Yeah, I've always been that way. I actually when I started making, and I was making dance music from a young age, I couldn't go to clubs, or I was way too young to go out. So for me, I was kind of recreating this kind of experience of going out, like in my mind, like imagining how it would be to be in a club, at a rave, or at a festival.
Totally.
In my living room, or like in our basement. So I was always making music on my own a lot. I've collaborated over the years, and I still like to, but most of the time I'm really it's me.
Yeah.
Me, myself, and I.
Yeah. Any advice for folks that are like you, that are kind of, because I feel like it can be a little bit lonely, maybe, I guess, sometimes, or maybe you're kind of like in a bubble, like you are trying to be objective about your own music, but you're an audience of one, like
Mm,
any advice for folks on that?
make make your working space as comfortable as possible. Like just be fi- like a lot of it has to do, I think, not really with um technical things, but a lot of it
Sure.
is just being happy where you are, like finding a place where you like to be, and trusting your instincts.
Yeah.
That's something that I always come back to. Like my first instinct about something is usually the one that I'm going with.
Usually the best idea.
And yeah,
Yeah.
there's different approaches to that. I know there's people who like to like uh, rethink and restructure and
Yeah.
rework stuff, and if it works for them, that's fine. But for me, it's always I try to be very impulsive and really use like
Yeah.
the first thing that comes up, and also trust your instincts when it comes to letting go of something. I guess that's one of the hardest parts when you're making music, especially on your own. It's like knowing when to stop. Like maybe maybe the maybe the inspiration is gone, or maybe you're tired, or maybe you're hungry, or maybe you're not quite there,
Yeah.
and to kind of know yourself enough to be able to tell yourself in those moments, like, stop, I need to do something else. Or
Yeah.
I don't know, in those moments, maybe a lot of it is about knowing yourself, I guess, and
Totally.
how you work in these kind of situations.
I like that
And
concept of like letting go. I think you do have to like trust yourself. If in the moment you're just like, okay, right now it's not working, I'm gonna walk away and go do something else. But I also think about it in context of the
mm,
music itself. Like sometimes we work on an idea and we put so much time or work into it that we have trouble throwing it away if it's a bad idea. We try to like force it to
yeah,
be good. Do you have experience with that? Like where
yes,
you throw out like ideas that are like
uh,
you just have to get rid of them?
that's I, I do it all the time. I think it's very important to be able to do that, and it's something that probably took the longest to learn, and that I'm still learning, that I can say like, this is just not worth it. Like this is not something that I need to pursue.
Right.
Maybe it seemed right at that moment, but then pretty quickly I realize when it's not something I want to pursue further. Like maybe you get back to it after a few weeks, and then you find, or months maybe, and you
Yeah.
find a completely different angle to approach it. But I'm usually not like that. Like I tend to just start something new and see where that leads me.
Sure.
So yeah, the longer I make music, the better I get at just saying, yeah, no,
Just cutting it.
let's
Yeah.
just cut it. Yeah,
Yeah. Beisha asks, what inspires you to create? That's a big one. I know you talked about like
that's a big
environment and
one.
stuff, but like is there other types of
Yeah.
art that you consume like beyond music that maybe influences the music? Like your environment, like there's your environment, but then there's like movies, TV, visual art, like anything like that like influencing you?
I would say it probably does. I read a lot. I right now, of course, watch a lot of movies, and I'm interested in art, but it's not something that I could pinpoint
Sure.
directly, where I could say like, because I did this, it led me to doing that. That's pretty rare
Yeah.
that I do this. Maybe when it comes to like, especially with art, when it comes to certain concepts, like how to approach something, for example. But it's not like such a direct way from
Yeah.
hearing something, listening to something, reading something to creating something. It's probably more like I soak it all in, process it, and then it comes out somehow. One thing I have to say about inspiration, though, is that which ties back again creating an environment also is about like creating a certain headspace to work in. Like for example, I do breath work, I meditate, and I try to be aware and have this kind of I would say like mindfulness, how do you say, techniques. Those really help me to be inspired and to be creative, because I can only personally make music or create something when I feel good. Like it has to come from a place of positivity and of like well-being. And when I feel well, like I can create well. And when I'm distracted, or when I'm stressed, or when I'm strung out, or when there's something else on my mind, I can't get into that zone of being creative. So that's something that is more directly inspired, related to being inspired for me, I would say. Like having the right headspace.
Yeah. Are there any particular like resources you could recommend for artists that maybe want to get into like getting in the right headspace, mindfulness, breath work, that kind of thing?
I actually use different apps. Like there's actually Headspace. I was just checking out this documentary on like if you've never done anything like meditation, for example, or mindfulness, and you want to get into it, it can be daunting because there's like so many different ways to approach it. What I really liked was this new documentary on Netflix from I think it's from Headspace. You will find it right away.
Yeah, I've
really
seen
nice.
it.
There's like some, so that's like a really easy starter, and there you can already see like what kind of techniques you like, and that's really helpful. Yeah, that's what I would say. Like if you've never done anything like that, that's a really good starting point, I would say.
Yeah, especially for a person like yourself, if you've got like the DJ stuff, you've got the music, like creating original music production, and then the label, being a label owner, which I want to talk a little bit about. That's so ambitious, so much going on. What led you down that path when taking the step from being, you know, kind of an artist, a creator yourself, to now you want to kind of organize, you know, some stuff, and maybe just define for us like what does it look like being a label owner for you?
That's a good question. I mean, actually, I had a label 10 years ago already when I first started out. I actually worked in the record distribution, like vinyl record distribution, for a few years. So I kind of knew how to do it. And I was also always very single-minded in my approach. Like I never really sent out demos at first, because I was intimidated, but also because I didn't really know where to send them and like who might listen to them. And I kind of figured out back in those days, like I'll try to do it on my own. I'll just press up like 400 records, do everything myself, and see where it leads me. And that was a very good learning experience. But I also noticed pretty quickly, especially starting out, that you can only get so far on your own.
Right.
Like it is a good learning experience, but I knew that I needed people that could help me and that I could work with, and that could also make the music just like spread it more and make it available to more people. So that's when I decided to send out demos. Like I had a list of labels that I really liked, and that I wanted to approach. And that's when I sent out my first demos after I had put out my own music already.
Right.
The good thing was, for example, with Inner Visions, where I released most of my music on, they were already playing the stuff that I put out on my own. So it was kind of like having an open door.
Yeah.
And like I knew that if I would send them something, at least they will listen to it.
Yeah.
And I also like their approach. Or there's other labels where release like Permanent Vacation or Hyven Discs, for example, where it was the same, where I kind of had this entrance already because of the music that I put out myself. And then for a few years, I only made music on other people's labels and kind of left my own label behind as a learning experience, as a kind of like a stepping stone, maybe. And just, last year or maybe end of 2019, I felt this urge to start a label again, but to do it like properly this time.
Sure.
And also release other people's music, which is different from just having your own music to care for, because you have a lot more responsibility and you want to make it right for them. Like if I put something out, like if I put out my own music and I don't know, it doesn't work the way I intended it.
You're only accountable to yourself. Yeah.
That's right. So
but with other people, like they have expectations and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, they have expectations, and I know how it is being an artist on the label. Like I know the kind of expectations that I have from the label. So I kind of wanted to be at a spot in my, or at a place in my career where I felt like I could provide the kind of work and the kind of network and promotion and everything that you would expect, or that you need when you create a label. So
sure.
This is kind of why I did it now, and also just it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's another creative outlet.
Yeah. Are you involved in any of the creative direction of the other artists, like talking about like what the artwork's gonna look like, or like what type of release it's gonna be, like anything like that? Or is it mostly like the distribution, getting it out there, getting it in front of the right people, that sort of thing?
I would say I would say I curate the music, obviously.
Yep.
But when the music comes to me, like the music part it's ready. Like I do like there's one release that's coming out, for example, where I did some of the mix down, where I was involved in that. I'm giving suggestions for like arrangements if I see something, but it's always like a back and forth and work in progress. Like the next right now I'm putting out a record by myself. It's coming out next week actually, and there's a remix from a friend from Jesse Trinidad, and there, for example, I helped with the mix down. Right. The record that comes after that is by two guys called Comenda, and they sent me the music, and I heard it and I loved it. And I was like, yeah, this is ready. It. Like there's not so it's always different. And when it comes to the artwork, I try to work with a different artist for every release, like with a different designer. And there, the musicians have a say. Like I'll ask them, like, hey, do you know anyone that you might want to work with? And then we take it from there.
Yeah.
And for my own releases, I actually do the artwork on my own. It's kind of also that's
cool.
That I'm.
So you're a visual artist as well.
Yeah. And it's fun. Like I like to I like to do some visual stuff just for myself, and I was always interested in that. Like back in the days, I did a lot of flyer designs and stuff like
Right.
that. I never really approached it. I say like I never put too much thought behind it, but now that I have a label, like for me, it's a great way to do that as well. Like
Yeah.
I love good design. I'm really interested in it, and that's just another way for me to kind of showcase that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that working with other artists and being involved in that whole creative process, beyond just your own music, do you find that like it
Mm.
invigorates your creative like soul, your creative mind, like to be able to go and like be involved in other people's work, you know, and not just your own
Mm.
all the time?
I guess what I learned is that it gives me more perspective on the label work itself, like all the different aspects that are to it, and it, I don't feel that it really feeds back into what I'm doing with my own music, but with a lot of things that are more involved with like maybe marketing or social media, things like that, which is also a creative
Yeah.
process and something that's very important. So for these kind of things, it gives me new ideas and new new strategies maybe that I haven't thought of before when I was just making my own music and putting it out on other people's labels.
Yeah.
It's just a different approach, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
We've got lots of young producers in the chat, burgeoning artists, maybe not necessarily young, from all ages of life, perhaps. I wonder, like, is there any like wisdom or some advice that you can give the folks out there that are just starting out that want to follow a similar path to you? You know, like
Mm.
the artist, the DJ, the label owner, like they want to follow all these paths. It can be tough out there to make your way in this industry and in this
Mm.
scene. So like what advice can you give to folks who want to follow in a similar path?
Um, put the music first. That's something. Yeah. I mean, what can I say? That's the end all be all of what we're doing is to create music that moves people, that makes people feel things, that inspires them, that just brings joy into people's lives. So that's the first thing, really, to focus on the music and to just listen to as much music as you can, try to learn as much as you can, like try to everything that you can find information. Like for what I love doing is, for example, reading biographies
Mm-hmm.
of musicians, or like books about like music culture, or channels like yours where it's about like listen to people talk about it. Like there's great
Right.
podcasts, for example, just learn about the history of music, the culture of music, and think about it. And I might be, I don't know, maybe it's naive, but I think everything else follows from that. You know,
Yeah. I think you're right about the
yeah.
consuming thing, the consuming content, biographies, podcasts, interviews. Because what I've learned from doing the show, at least, is like I talk to all different artists, and everybody has their own
Mm.
perspective, their own experience, but there are common threads between all of them for
Mm.
sure. And then there are ways they diverge. And I think, like you said, with talking about running the label, like different perspectives and different people, different artists. I think out there, like it's the same thing. Like if you consume enough. Knowledge from other artists and just hear their story, like eventually something will connect with you and you'll see yourself in that
Mm.
artist and you'll see like a path that you yourself can take. I think like that's the
Yeah.
biggest, that's been huge for me because I listen to podcasts and interviews all day, from just different
Yeah.
people, different creative people, not even just musicians, just to hear about the pathway. Because I think the music industry especially like has a tough time to make independent artists. You know, like you see a lot of like visual
Mm.
artists, graphic designers. That seems a bit more of an easier industry to break into and start making a living, whereas the music industry seems a little, it's a little bit scarier. Like it's a little bit like not so much of a sure thing, you know?
Yeah. It's the problem is that we don't really have most of the time a physical product to sell.
Right.
So it's yeah, that's another big issue for sure.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode for sure. Yeah. But it's like you said, the more information you have, the easier it is to make decisions and to find out for yourself what's right for you. And in the end, that's what it's about. It's about what feels right for yourself, and to kind of find that path and stick to it.
Absolutely. This has been a really inspiring chat, so I want to thank you for having it. If folks in the there are lots of questions, we didn't get to all the questions, but folks want to go deeper with AERA. Of course, you're doing the pro session this weekend. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what you have planned for the pro session? Like, what's the format for the 2 days and all that good stuff?
Yeah, we have 2 days. So on Saturday, I will talk mainly about like how I approach melodies and how I think about it, like how I construct them. It will be a lot about like I've got quite some Max for Life plugins or instruments that I like to use, like MIDI effects and stuff. So we'll explore that in depth. Like, it will be probably quite technical, but I guess that's what people are in for.
Yeah.
And the second day will be about how to finish a track, like how I go from the first raw idea to the finished product, take you to the steps and how I approach it, and what different ways there are to get to an end, to finished product like this.
Well, sounds like it's going to be an amazing couple days. So if folks want to take that deeper dive with AERA, check the link in the description. Check out the 343 Labs Pro sessions. It's coming up, and the early bird tickets are already sold out. So make sure you grab the regular tickets. And then also the workshop is you get to keep it. Like, there's a download of the workshop later. So folks should take advantage of that resource. It's really, really cool. I want to thank 343 Labs for putting on this show today. If you are interested in learning electronic music, music production, all that good stuff, you can head to 343labs.com for longer, like 12-week courses, which are starting all the time. But if you want to just dip your toe in the water, pro sessions is a good way to start this weekend. AERA, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It's really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. And thank you to everybody who was hanging out in chat. We had a good time. We'll be back again with TAETRO Talks next week. I'll let you all know who the guest is in the coming days. So make sure you're following me on Twitter, on Instagram, and all that good stuff. AERA, where can they follow you? Where can folks head and go follow your pages? Or what do you want them to check out? Twitter, Instagram.
You just had like some crazy buffer effects on your voice.
Oh,
but
my
I guess
bad.
This is I guess this is the time to pitch my Instagram.
Yes, there, go for it.
I get that part. You can follow me at AERAgram on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm /AERRA, so AERA with 3 R's, because there's apparently a few other errors, and the same on SoundCloud as well. Right. SoundCloud.AERRA.
Perfect. Go check them out.
Nice one.
Give them a listen. Give them a follow. Check out the pro session this weekend. Thanks so much, everybody. This has been TAETRO and AERA. Have a good one. Peace out.